How's your day going, Sarah?
It's good. Thanks, Ada. So good. Yeah, I actually got back to like a little bit of, wouldn't call it writing, but like organizing things in my computer today.
Oh,
And
good.
so,
For yeah.
hello everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are live and we are about to start this wonderful event. Um, Thank you all for attending tonight's event. We are very excited. We have with us tonight Sarah Blakley Cartwright, the author of Alice Sadie Celine. She will be in conversation tonight with Ada Calhoun. So the general gist of the event will be we will start off with general introductions. Ada has been gracious enough to have a conversation with Sarah about her new book, and they will have a wonderful dialogue on that. And then we will conclude with audience questions, which all of you can ask on the YouTube chat that is available to you all. So ask away. As you will see, there is currently a link to get copies of Alice Sadie Celine. Uh, Sarah has been very gracious and very lovely to sign copies of the book, and those will be available to you for purchase tonight. And it is a wonderful gift not only for today, but also in the coming days as the holiday season approaches. So let us get started. I will introduce you all to our wonderful guests. So, Sarah Blakley Cartwright is the author of Alice Sadie Celine, which is the book that we'll be discussing here today. She's also the author of Red Riding Hood, a New York Times #1 bestseller that was published worldwide in 38 editions in 15 languages. Sarah is the editor of the Artist's Library, featuring conversation with artists on their most beloved books, transcribed and appearing monthly at Hauser & Wirth's Ursula magazine. The series launched in March 2021 with Annie Smith on Vladimir Nabokov's Speak Memory. She's the publishing director of the Chicago Review of Books and associate editor of A Public Space. She has been the recipient of residencies and scholarships from the Military Colony of the Arts, the Kimmel Harding Nelson Center for the Arts, the Aspen Writings Foundation, and the Virginia Center for the Creative Arts. She has spoken at South by Southwest, AWP, Brazil's Bienal de Livros, One Story Summer Conference, and the Roxbury's Writers' Residence. Sarah's writing has appeared in Bomb Magazine and the Georgia Review, and she has written about Henny often for Karma Books and James Baldwin for the National Book Review. And in conversation tonight is Ada Calhoun. Ada is the author of Also a Poet, Frank O'Hara, My Father and Me, named one of the best books of 2022 by the New York Times, The Washington Post, Oprah Daily, and NPR. Featured on PBS NewsHour and The Today Show, and is longlisted for an Andrew Carnegie Medal for nonfiction. Times critic Alexander Jacobs called it her favorite memoir of the year. Hudson Booksellers called it the nonfiction book of the year. So once again, we want to thank you all for joining us today, and we are gracious to have these wonderful authors and with us today. And I will pass it off to Ada, and you guys will have a spectacular event.
Thank you so much, Edison. So I just heard this news. I don't know if you know, Sarah, that the Book Loft just bought their building.
Oh my
So
God, I
I
didn't
know
hear
it's
that.
like
That's
I
amazing.
know. Apparently,
Something
like
to celebrate tonight.
everybody heard the building sold and got all worked up and worried, and it turned out no, they bought their own building. So
Oh my God, it's a
happy
roller
books
coaster of emotions.
yeah, so everybody go buy Sarah's book and many other books from them tonight online.
Ada's
Anyway, I'm so
look
excited to
at it.
be here with you. What a wonderful book. So I just want to start off by
Great to
saying,
be here together.
yeah, it's so nice, not in a backyard. We're friends, and I've had the privilege of holding Sarah's extremely smart and beautiful baby.
Oh, yes.
Congratulations on that
We
too.
sometimes lay around each other's backyards upstate. It's fantastic. And
Very lucky.
snuggle babies.
Okay, but now we're it's all
But
business.
we're also very serious writers, and we
Very
both
serious.
have writing sheds in our backyards. Mine was inspired by Ada's writing shed,
Oh,
100,000%. I literally took pictures, took them home, and said, "I'm turning my chicken coop into a writing shed," which is every writer's dream. So,
does yours still smell like chickens too? Mine still smells a little like chicken.
yeah, you don't inhale too
Mhm.
broadly.
Okay. Okay. So, but we're very serious. So just tell us, for those who don't know, about like a quick introduction to the book and how it came to you, and about the writing process. in your
Yeah.
shed or elsewhere?
In the shed or out of it. Um, yes. So Alice Sadie Celine is the story of a girl who falls in love with her best friend's mother, or a mother who falls in love with her daughter's best friend. We hear from everyone equally, so it could be framed anyway. But yeah, and I began with the idea of the triangle. That came to me minute one. And I realized that with one triangle, it very effectively allowed me to have a mother daughter, two best friends, and a pair of romantic lovers. Um, and a closed triangle with three women. All of that with three people. And I'm not somebody who has a great facility with the architecture of novels, structuring a novel, plot. So this was very good for me because I realized that the entire story, the threat to those three relationships could be the organizing principle of the story.
Mhm.
And I was very lucky that day. Those three women came to me all at once, and they were always exactly who they are now. I say that they kind of like sprang like Athena from Zeus's forehead. I learned the word for it, parthogenesis, or like Aphrodite from the scallop shell. They arrived exactly themselves. And that's something that I really love about the book. And I think it's why I gave the novel the title I did, Alice Sadie Celine. Because it's really, the book is them. They are the pillars of this book. And that title, that's the order in which we hear from the three characters. And so it goes ABC, Alice Sadie Celine, Alice Sadie Celine. And Sadie links them, which was important to me, that she's both the glue and the barrier between them. Sadie is the daughter. Yeah, and the title came to me that day too. And actually, without realizing that it was the Sadie sandwich that was very useful, but that, and kind of interesting that the characters' names play off of each other and may even disorient the reader on occasion with the consonants. Hopefully not too much. Yeah, so that was sort of how it started. And then I did write a lot in the writing shed. It actually wasn't complete when I was doing the first draft, so it was more editing. But we had to shovel out the poo, poo and feathers. The writing process took place a lot in bed, which I always felt really, or worried, delegitimized my writing. I felt like I was supposed to write at sort of a big imposing desk with like a shark skin blotter or something.
Like a fountain pen, maybe? Yeah.
If I didn't have a fountain pen, was it real? Were the words real? But actually, I'm somebody who I like life. I like to be out in it. I like to walk around my neighborhood. So, I like to be with my daughter. So sometimes I'm dictating, and sometimes I'm in bed with my poodle on my lap and cup of tea, and that's the best. So that's how the sausage got made over time.
I love it. I love it really does, you really do feel that the three parts so evenly. Like it does feel almost like some
Good.
kind of archetypal thing, with the threes with the witches and the rule of threes and all that. It feels very cosmic somehow.
Ooh, the witches and the role of, what is the role of threes? Do you
The
know?
rule of three, right? Everything comes back to you three times. Witches
Oh.
are very into threes.
I
Yeah.
didn't know that. Well, I feel very witchy, but I must have just intuited that. So that makes some sense to me.
Organic.
Yes.
Um, I wanted to ask you, I know you're a huge reader. You write a lot about books. Is there a genre you particularly like? What kind of writers? I thought I had this moment of like, an Elena Ferrante like reference or something, and then like on the next page, like the characters talk about her. So yeah, and also I just love, there's so many cultural references in this. It just feels very alive with culture, like Animaniacs and like so many different things. But literarily, like, how do you what genre do you place it in, and what other writers were you thinking of, or do you like in general?
That's true, because I always that's funny that you picked up on that, because I always name check, like, the mothers of this novel, or like Carson McCullers and but so much more, and I grew up, grew up in college. I was a literary major, and I went to Barnard, where they make you do, the classics, and it's like a lobster in a bath that you realize that you've been reading men for millennia of years, until finally you're a senior and they're like, okay, here, I took the writer Mary Gordon's class, and she was like, here's Jean Stafford and Doris Lessing and Willa Cather, Grace Paley. And suddenly I was like, I did not even realize what bath I was in for all those years. But so I name checked them a lot as the mothers of the novel, but actually, in more recent years, it's been like the Miley Malloy, Julie Oranger, Tessa Hadley, Jeanette Winterson, Mona Simpson, Jenny O'Feel. But it is true. I do have a lot of sort of cultural references that don't. I wonder. I'd like to go through those writers and think with an eye for that, of their time. But I don't think I'd find the Animaniacs. But that is interesting. Really, what I'm looking for is authors who create psychological depth on the page. Traditional plot I can take or leave, which writers always like to say, we're like, we are above plot. However, I will say personally, I can often find it distracting. I really love to be in character. I always love the first halves of books where they're establishing the world and the habits of the people. I could just read the habits of people's lives for days. I want to finish a book not necessarily feeling I've been on the ride of my life, but feeling I've gotten to know someone really well.
Yeah. Oh, well, you definitely do that. I was thinking of the Bechdel test, right? Where they say, like, if people don't know it, it's if a work features at least two female characters who have a conversation about something other than a man. And I feel like this was like an A+ on the Bechdel test. Like that there are so many wonderful relationships between women and really nuanced. And so I'm wondering what aspect of women's internal and external lives did you want to convey, and what doesn't get talked about enough in work about women?
Mm-hmm. The three women I think were a way to give voice to three parts of myself that I think are perceptible, but maybe sometimes dormant facets of my character. Sometimes I'm like the daughter who would really like to have like a very set blueprint for life, a strategy, know exactly where she's going. Which is of course why this affair rattles her so badly, is because she was like, that was not in the plan. But then sometimes, just as often, I want to throw a bomb into any foregone plan, like the mother. And I think the daughter has a line at one point: convention had the ring of the exotic. Whereas for her mother, the fact that the idea that she could be becoming conventional is her greatest fear. But yeah, I think I was raised by artists, had a very I had a very fertile, unorthodox childhood. And when we grow up in such unconventional ways, you can long like the daughter for a dose of normality. And I do have both strains within me. I think the novel is me trying on both for size. I think maybe a question at the heart of the novel, like beneath all of that, after I say, oh, this is how she is, this is how she is, and then the friend is sort of like floaty and finding her way between the two and very flexible. And that's kind of her strength, is that she's kind of nonpartisan. The other two are such poles. And Alice really doesn't feel she has to self-define in that way. And she's sort of the one who has the least kind of neon light convictions. The other two are very like strong and firm in what they believe. And but I don't think I don't think she's any less strong for that. And in fact, in many ways, I think she's more solid than the other two. So I think a question at the heart of the novel is identity constructed? Can we shed our identities and be someone new? I think a lot is asked of women to self-define in how we dress and how we self-present. Can you wake up every day and be a new person? I read a Vivian Gornick quote when I was breastfeeding my daughter, because they're little tiny perfect breast feed side reading. Wow, that was like a Dr. Seuss tongue twister. And she wrote that it is the great illusion of society, or one of the great illusions of society, that what we confess to is who we are. So I thought that was such an interesting line about, how much is it all window dressing, what we decide to put on and what we pretend to be, or is it who we are? When is it too late to reinvent yourself? When are you too entrenched in your community to suddenly become a different person? So I think all of that is interesting. Also, we talked about my daughter and, of course, what is expected of women. I'm thinking of you because it's a topic that you've written about, and also with all the art things. But did you see the Alice Neal retrospective at the Met? Oh, you didn't. Okay. It was a good one, but it's so great. Her paintings are so great. They're so incisive. She's so compassionate. The show was called People Come First, and you're just astonished walking through the rooms at her incredible compassion. Then you find, and this is not to diminish her work in any way, I really want to say that, but and I really believe that, but there's a painting of her daughter, her young daughter, and then there's like a little footnote, and it's like, well, she abandoned her, she left her daughter with her daughter's father in Cuba, left, the daughter tried to reach her for 30 years, never could reach her, finally died, and not to connect this, but who knows, but died by suicide, and never having spoken to her mother again. And I think that, of course, as a progressive person, we say, well, too much is asked of women, too much is asked of mothers. We don't ask the same things of men. Men do that all the time. Also, she's a great artist, and this was what was required of her to make her masterworks. I think all of that is true. And yet, what I was interested in looking at in the book is, being a person who believes all of that is true, I also wanted to ask myself, are there things we should ask of mothers? Should we ask them to call the daughter back after 20 years, or should we, we can ask of them, don't do harm. But of course, I do harm to my daughter all the time. She's only 13 months, and I will continue to do it. But yeah, I think it's actually me really asking myself, like, as I wrote this, and I wasn't a mother yet when I wrote it, actually. She was not a twinkle in the eye, but just what's asked of me as a mother, I really don't know. And that's why I'm a novelist. I'm like, I'd love to know, and I don't think there's clear answers.
I'd like to make you read a page in a minute, if that's okay.
Oh, yes. Oh my gosh. Let me get my book. I don't have it in front of me. I'm so sorry.
Oh, yeah, get your book.
Wait. Yeah, let me get it. I'll be right back.
Oh, look, it's Peppily the poodle.
You know what? I'm just gonna read from the PDF, which is right here.
Okay, or we don't have to if you're not.
I would love to. I'm so sorry. I just completely did not have that pulled up. Okay. We don't get to see all of you participants, which I would love to see everybody. You don't see anybody, do you?
Well, I don't see anybody. I did.
I think only Edison gets to see them.
I guess so. I did Why We Can't Sleep as a virtual tour after, because it was right when the pandemic shut everything down. Like, it came out right before that. And it was like, you could see everybody in a lot of the ones I did, but it was like, everybody was so sad. So there's just like 100 crying, like on my whole screen, like in a
gosh.
chessboard of sorrow.
Oh no, a chessboard of sorrow. That's horrible. Yeah. Well, I'd love to see all of your beautiful faces, but okay.
So I'm going to ask a question while you're looking.
Okay, good idea.
There's a sexual romantic encounter between two women in the book, right? That some people might consider scandalous. I want to know if you could talk about the origin and the effect of that connection in the world of the book. And then I think the page that I would request is the
good. Good. You have it.
I think 106 or something, like somewhere in there.
Oh,
107, wasn't that it? Where
perfect.
Or anything you want. Just a little, maybe just a little taste for people of what the book sounds like.
Okay. Yes. That is a great idea.
So talk about the sexiness and then read a little bit about the sex.
Okay, good. Yeah. Yeah. So the sexiness, yeah, the affair and the origin of it. So I think what happened with that was that I personally was raised by two parents, I mentioned, unconventional, who were never together in my lifetime. She was 11 years older than my dad. It was an unplanned pregnancy. And but they both really showed up as parents and they both really raised me. My mom never had a romantic partner in her life. I'm 36 and she has never had one that I know of. My father has had many wonderful women in our lives, these sort of very powerful, embodied women who were in our lives for a time and then they broke up and he moved on. But so I really grew up kind of with those three things very blurred. What is a mother? What is a lover? What is a friend? What happens when a mother is a lover, is a friend? These girlfriends came in and they were his lover, then they sort of settled into a maternal position with me, and then they would break up and suddenly they would stay on as my friends. I have these, one of my best friends is a 65-year-old woman who was, his girlfriend for a time, and we really don't have a mother-daughter relationship. We really have a friend relationship. So for me, I think I was really exploring what happens when the boundaries between our prescribed identities and affiliations break down. And that's a little bit what I was saying when I said I hope that the names are a little bit not confusing, but just when definitions sort of start to merge and blend a little bit. The daughter in this novel really wants her mother to be not her friend, but to be her mother. She the mother instead treats her daughter as her friend. She certainly doesn't treat her as someone she's responsible for protecting. She ignores all the rules of behaving within the family. And the affair, I really asked myself, like, if my mother had an affair with my best friend, I would be dumbfounded. I would be staggered. It would break every rule of the universe. I would hate them. I'd never speak to either of them again. That was my first initial reaction. And then I thought, I want to interrogate that. Why such a visceral reaction? Why such fevered boundary setting around the people in my life? Is it such a monstrous misdeed? Is it costing me anything to let them have that relationship? And then wondering, is that sort of ownership mentality, is that parochial or not? So I would say that was sort of all of the things leading into the affair. And then the sexiness, I just really wanted to write a sexy book. I thought it was important. And actually thinking about my daughter, like, it's funny. I thought about that as I was editing, because I edited while she was born, after she was born. And I thought, I do want to see women enjoying themselves on the page. I do think that's important in books. I don't necessarily want her to read my sexy pages, but, I want her to read pages in which, women's bodies are nothing to be ashamed of. And yeah, that was meaningful to me. I feel like so often you read books and it'll be like building to the sexiness, and then it'll be like, and now we're gonna have a page break, line break, white space, afterward, ... and you're like, what? They cut on the good stuff. So it felt important to me to show it. And yeah, and I guess in a time when reproductive rights are so threatened, that also felt important to state the obvious, which is, or not state, but show the obvious that a sexual body is nothing to be ashamed of. Okay, so leading in, 106. Okay. So this is, well, I guess it needs no introduction. Alice had slept with Celine because she was famous, because she was sexy, because she wasn't that famous, because she wasn't conventionally sexy, because she was 20 years older, because she could see the girl in her. She slept with Celine because it was absolutely forbidden. She slept with Celine because it was suddenly possible, because Celine was there, because she had come, because Sadie had sent her, because Alice did not know why. Alone in the Airbnb after Celine left, Celine wondered, or I'm sorry, Alice wondered how it could be that downstairs on Grove Street, under golden high-pressure sodium lights, pedestrians cast in a creamsicle orange were crossing the thoroughfare, hand in hand with their children, ferrying shopping bags, not even glancing up in the direction of the crime. Alice saw that already in the heat, the anthuriums from Celine had bloomed past their healthy limit. The heads had fallen open like a hooker's legs, bloated and bloomed, showing their innards. People made terrible mistakes. One erroneous turn in a car, and you're the arbiter of a stranger's life. One imprudent snip in the surgery room, and you've severed the artery. For scale, the Titanic hit an iceberg. Nuclear equipment melted down at Chernobyl. Upturned seagulls lay obsidian with petroleum in the Gulf. The world kept spinning.
Yeah.
A little bit of guilt, a little bit of sexy guilt for you.
Sexy guilt. Yes.
I don't know if anyone's ever had
Monday
sexy
evening.
guilt before, but that's a little Monday sexy guilt for you.
That's what we need. I think we have maybe time for like one more little moment to talk with us. And then, so this is everybody's notification to start thinking your questions and writing them in. I think maybe some have already started, but if not, just share with Edison, and he is standing by
Love
to
the
take your questions. So I wonder if we can just talk about generations for a minute. I think it's so interesting what you talk about in terms of what Celine let herself have and didn't, and how that affected her daughter. You know, I think that it's so interesting the way generations of women react to each other. And you were talking earlier about how, like, if you have these bohemian parents, then there's this instinct to react against it, and they're like, white picket fences suddenly are very appealing.
Oh yeah, they look so good. Minivan.
Yeah, minivan.
And yet, you know what, Ada, do they? Because look at us. Like, do we have what? We kind of do. We kind of do. We do lay around in our yards, but we also, I don't know.
But I wonder if you can just talk a little bit about your generation. You're younger than I am, but your generation and older generations, and how you think they kind of play off each other, and especially in terms of women, and you know, what's eternal and what's new in terms of what women let themselves have.
Yes, and I think that let themselves have is such a good way to put it. And I think that's really something that I was looking at with the book, is like, what kinds of freedoms do we allow each other as women? And where do we say, like, well, that's, you know, crossing the line. You know, male, you know, the patriarchy is well established, and ever present and all around us, but I think we do think less about how women are participants in that. Anyway, but yeah, I think that, like, the, you know, the what the two women are reacting to is very different. I think the girls are inundated with a very sort of like blasé kind of buzzword prepackaged feminism, very kind of superficial brand of empowerment, which kind of name checks feminist ideology but functions within a male-centered framework, kind of Barbie and call my daddy feminism. But I think, you know, and meanwhile, what Celine was coming up against was, she was raised, you know, what's sort of now called third wave feminism, depends how you're counting your waves, but which, to be reductive about it, focused on vagina-centered topics. You know, it was like orgasm and birth and rape, and exploring those, and reclaiming the word whore and cunt. You know, then came the Butler-esque feminism, which Celine is a part of, even if I think she kind of uses feminism to justify her narcissism, and she's really kind of waving the Celine flag more than anything. But she's someone who wants to be free. She does not want anyone telling her what to do. So she, and she sort of ends up in this academic world as a fish out of water. But I really don't think she's, you know, she's not a Judith Butler. She doesn't have a very organized mind in that way. But anyway, all that is to say, like, you know, the idea that we perform gender, that, you know, gender is real only to the extent that it's performed, which is not radical anymore to say. But I think that was really exciting at the time, you know, the idea that even corporeal sex is a fiction, that the I emerges within an ecosystem of gender definitions that have been established by others across history, mostly men. Maybe. And I mean, yes, I think yes, but also what Sadie's saying is, sure, sometimes you don't want to think about that. You don't want to spend every day thinking about, like, where do I fit in the matrix of the I, and I think it's normal for this daughter that within all this freighted conversation that she wants to kind of protect her body by not sharing it. She doesn't want anyone writing all over it. She doesn't want to accept this betrayal by her mother and her best friend just because there are no boundaries and nothing matters, bohemian, progressive, free for all. And the mother sees this as a step backwards. But in the book, without saying too much, where I really wanted to end was meeting a next generation of women. So without saying too much, we have a little time leap at the end. And that felt really important to me to imagine, what if we took our levels of acceptance an additional step forward? What if not only could we accept this relationship, but if we didn't even find it was a question we'd have to ask, like, is there a generation coming who can take something like this completely in stride, like hear about it and say, that's the big secret, I thought you killed someone the way you guys were behaving, but that was maybe interesting to me, and looking into the future to see what women will allow each other going forward.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful, and a good place to end. So I think everybody
going forward into your questions.
Yes, and we need questions. Edison, can you bring us any audience questions? And I just want to remind everybody too that there are signed copies that you can get for all of your holiday presents via the Book Loft, and remember to shop via the Book Loft. There's a special place in Book Hell for people who shop on other outlets when at a virtual book event for an independent bookstore. So yes,
that is
all from Book Loft.
Please go to Book Loft, guys.
Absolutely, and we do have the link, as repeated. The link is on the in the page, and so let me read some questions and kind of finish out the event. So one of the viewers is asking about your, as the writer of the book, how kind of like the response to the book in the as you've released in the last couple weeks. What's it like as a writer to kind of like put that out into the world and then kind of get that feedback? What's that like in the process?
That is a great question. It is a bit weird. It's equal parts. I mean, not equal parts. It's 80% so wonderful to, see the stack of books and see it going down and see people taking it home in their bags, and people sending me pictures of people with it, and then a tiny part of you is like, oh my God, they're actually going to read this thing. Like, there is a little part that can feel slightly exposed. Writers are generally people who like to be in our shells, and not be too out in the sunshine. But it's really great. It's been, and the response has been so positive and so supportive. It's wonderful. Anytime that I'm a little bit like, my partner will remind me, like, this is just, try to enjoy it. That's what you've been waiting for all these years. And it is amazing. I do think I've taken it in sometimes, hopefully. Yeah. It's important to stop and be like, soak this in. This is what we do it for. Even if actually I don't believe that's what we do it for. If there's any writers here, we do it for the it of it. I think so.
Another question that folks are asking is, and it's another kind of like bookish kind of question in regards to the format of the book. Obviously, it's told from these different perspectives and these different characters. So one of the folks viewing is asking, what and why does the book move from different perspectives? So can you talk about like the purpose of, in terms of plot, of why that is, and why that was a preference for you as the writer of the book?
Yeah, I mean, I really hope that the story ends up belonging to all of the three characters equally. They were three impulses that I really can identify with. And that's why even when I introduced the book when Ada asked me to introduce it, I always had trouble. And when I was pitching the book, I really struggled with how to frame whose story it was. You actually heard my discomfort with it right at the start. I was like, it's about a girl. Actually, it's about a mom. Um, and actually, really, it's about a daughter who has to decide how to handle this thing. Um, you know, yeah, it felt important to me to give voice to each of those you know each of those positions in this situation. I really don't want to diminish the daughter's experience, and like I said earlier, like, why would I, my first reaction was to be dumbfounded as a person if this would happen to me as a daughter, and then my second reaction was the much more enlightened reaction of, well, why do I have to, put a stop in this? Like, why can't I just let love flow free? But I definitely am not landing on the side of that um attitude towards it. I really I think the only answer is that as a novelist, it's so much fun to just try on different cloaks and be like, today I'm the person who's like incredibly pissed off about this affair. That is not okay. Like, you don't do that to your daughter. And then today I'm the friend who's, supple and contorting herself and curious, and very intrepid. I want to give her credit for that. She ventured into a relationship with her friend's mother. That's not easy. Or is it? Did she just fall into it? Did she kind of have to overcome hurdles to do it? And then the other two, the mother and the daughter, are much more partisan. They're really like shifting alliances and strategic and kind of bloody minded. The friend doesn't really know how to be strategic. She's less dogmatic. Anyway, so that, just trying on those three different cloaks. The daughter, she overthinks. She's after this very solid life. It's just fun. I don't know how many writers are on this call, but readers hopefully have fun, exploring one situation, from a kind of kaleidoscope of different lenses.
Another question. Someone is asking, can you speak to how like the dynamics of friendship and kind of inform, I guess the question is, can you speak to friendship and gender roles and complexities in the book between Alice and Sadie?
The friends.
Yes.
Yeah, that's interesting because Celine is so the like, I'm a gender theoretician. Um, yeah, again, I feel like Alice is the one who allows herself more freedom to try on different personalities. She's wearing a hoodie and she's not super femmy necessarily. Gender roles with the two girls. I need to think more about that one, but I think that, yeah, there's the daughter is trying to find her sexuality, so she's really wrapped up in that with her, her boyfriend at the start of the book. And she's really trying to get past her mother's sexuality to get to her own sexuality. And the friend knows that, and so that's something that's a bit kind of deeper in there, is like, why would this friend who knows that the daughter, her best friend, has struggled so much past her mother's sexuality, why is the best friend going to go straight into the belly of the beast? Anyway, that's not quite gender, but that's, I'm going to think more about the gender roles with the two girls, but I will say that Sadie is much more strongly defined and, femmy. She wears her house dresses. She likes flowers. She's an interior decoratory person. Alice is literally an actress, she's trying on different roles. So
Yeah, that's a fair answer. Absolutely.
thank you so much. I think I found it at the end a little bit.
Yeah. So another question that folks are asking is let me try to read this right. So I guess they're asking like, and just this is kind of like more like outside the book, just kind of like just a literary scene in general. They're kind of asking about how there's these wonderful, writers that are all, women around the world and in the States, and just kind of like you're just kind of like talking about like your excitement, your feelings about the literary scene currently as constituted in the year 2023, and just kind of like, who are some writers that, speak to you and what's been really exciting about the last couple of years in writing and literary scene.
Mm-hmm. I read a book this year that I loved by the writer Ada Zhang, Zhang, called Sorrows of Others. And it's stories of immigrants who are trying to piece together what Ada calls an entire life after their lives have been sort of cleaved into past and future. Those are really beautiful stories. I also just started reading a book called January by Sarah Gallardo, which I ordered from my local indie. Support your local indies. And it just came in because it just came out. And it's an Argentinian novel that was first published in 1958, and it's in English for the first time. And it's this very vivid, powerful portrait of a 16-year-old girl and her private sense of guilt when she becomes pregnant after an assault. And there is just this incredibly powerful scene in which she gallops recklessly on a horseback to induce a miscarriage. And it's just this incredible perspective. Her point of view is so well inhabited as a 16-year-old girl, a very smart, very observant, but ultimately 16-year-old point of view. I really recommend that. And that's a new one.
And then I'm gonna ask one for me, just because like
and also I love how the writer framed that question, that exciting things are happening in the literary world. There's so much hemming and hawing about how things aren't good anymore.
It's true. It's quite
even if that was written in 1958, but
I mean, yeah, no, I think that's a wonderful thing. It's just, we're just, not only are we discovering new voices in the present, but we're also going back. And I think the explosion of like translated novels allows us the ability to kind of go back and, get introduced to all these wonderful, voices that have never necessarily gotten their due.
Thank God for the translators.
Yeah. I wanted to ask, and it's a little fun question, because when I was reading the book, I happened, the book Loft is located here in Columbus, Ohio, and so Ohio gets mentioned a couple times in the book. Do you have any experiences with the state, or is there a particular, or is that just kind of like a thing that just kind of like, as you were writing it, just kind of seemed like a nice place to write about?
My family's from Idaho, and somehow I didn't want to just like really place it exactly in Idaho. So Ohio was kind of my Idaho adjacent. But yeah, it's a very important place in the book. It's the genesis of Celine, just like Idaho is the genesis of me and my family. So yes, we love Ohio.
So I think we're gonna end it on that note. But I just want to say that I'm very thankful to both Sarah and Ada for this wonderful conversation. Alice, Sadie, Celine is a phenomenal book. If you get the chance to pick it up, which there is a link at the bottom of the page. There is a link that's highlighted. We've uh, made especially sure that that is something that you folks can order. And just to let you know that Sarah has signed copies of the book. It is something that is very generous, and we're very thankful to Sarah for doing that for us. And being able to provide that for our folks here in at the Book Loft. And so once again, the book is Alice, Sadie, Celine. It's a great book. Get copies today. Get them for your loved ones this holiday season. And once again, thank you, Ada. Thank you, Sarah. I hope you guys have a wonderful holidays this year.
You too. Happy holidays, Edison. Great to see
Happy
you here.
holidays, Edison, and thank you all for being here, and thank you for reading, and please find Ada Calhoun's book, also a poet. So
Yes.
beautiful, incisive, gorgeous. Okay, thank you guys. Happy holidays.